It was a nice sunny day on the 8th of June 1996 in the county of Somerset in southwest England. 25-year-old University of Bath graduate Melanie Hall was looking forward to see and stay with her boyfriend Philip Karlbaum and made arrangements to be with him. Melanie Hall's mother dropped her off at his home and Melanie and Philip got ready and went out to the Cadillac's nightclub in Bath, Somerset with another couple. As the night progressed, Melanie Hall was reported as having had an argument with her boyfriend Philip Karlbaum, and he left the club upset after he allegedly saw her dancing with another man. On June 9, 1996, Melanie Hall disappeared and was last seen sitting on a stool in the Cadillac's nightclub at around 1:10 a.m. that day. Melanie Hall's parents reported her missing on June 11, 1996 after she failed to turn up for work. Her German doctor boyfriend Philip Karlbaum described his devastation at her disappearance on the 17th of June 1996. Avon and Somerset police launched several searches of the River Avon after her disappearance and interviewed thousands of clubbers and taxi drivers. A £10,000 reward was offered for information. The BBC show Crime Watch and Crime Stoppers both made appeals to the public for information, as did Hall's sister Dominique, but no trace of Hall was found. Melanie Hall was declared legally dead on the 17th of November 2004.
When someone goes missing, at what point should you assume there's been foul play? It's a regular dilemma for the police because, after all, most missing people turn up safe and well. In this case, though, detectives have assumed the worst, and that means murder. Melanie Hall went missing back in June from the centre of Bath near her home in Wiltshire, and no one's seen her since. But 1 week after her disappearance, a conversation was overheard just outside Melanie's home village.
We were walking along the Kennet and Avon Canal towards Bradford and Avon. We noticed a black and white cat just ran across our path onto a canal boat.
I don't believe you. Nothing happened with Melanie. Why couldn't such a guilty man?
It wasn't until a couple of days later that the name Melanie actually twigged that it could be connected to the Melanie Hall case.
That narrowboat may well be immaterial, but it hasn't yet been traced. It was dark blue with a beige interior, and the couple were aged late 20s to early 30s. Melanie was 25, a graduate in psychology intending to do a PhD.
Melanie was a lovely girl, a wonderful daughter, full of life, looking forward to the future. She had finished her degree a year ago and had probably taken the year out to just enjoy life.
Melanie's mum works at the Royal United Hospital in Bath and found Melanie a temporary job as a clerical assistant.
She'd almost completed a year working at the hospital, and she'd started a new relationship with one of the doctors, and she was hoping to move into her own little house within 6 weeks.
Oh, Melanie, hello. Is everything okay for this weekend?
I've got to go home first and pick up my stuff, but I'll meet you at yours later if that's okay, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So.
Great. Oh, that's my bleeper going. I'll catch you later.
Okay, maybe see you for lunch, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, bye.
Melanie appeared to me affectionate and attractive woman. I sort of dated her 3 weeks, and we did quite a lot of things together. We went out for meals, to the cinema, to clubs, and had a very good time, actually.
Saturday the 8th of June, and they started the evening at a barbecue with friends.
How are you doing?
Are you dressed? Yeah, got it today. Help me choose
That's good,
Don't
yeah.
feel it. What have we got there? Got some stuff for the barbecue. And everybody's out there, so you might as well just go and pop it in.
In the fridge there?
Yeah, no problem.
Later that night, 4 of them decided to go night-clubbing. This is Walcott Street in Bath.
To be the worst driver on the planet. Getting crashes. How's that chicken, Steve? No, it's just been one of them. That didn't agree with you, did
I went to the loo and I came back to the dance floor, and I sort of had a look across the dancing floor, and I saw Melanie dancing with another man. Initially I couldn't believe it because I was so surprised. Became rather disappointed and a bit upset as well. I couldn't explain it. We had a wonderful time and were in really good spirits and we were out to have some fun, and she was dancing with this other man and in a rather intimate fashion, so I went to the car to wait for her. I just needed some time to sort myself out and think about what happened. Smoked a cigarette, and I was waiting for some sort of reaction. Either that Melanie would come out of the club and sort of look for me. She knew where the car was, so, and I was just waiting, and nothing really happened, and then decided I'd go home.
There you are. Listen, we're going to go now. Yeah, we're just both really tired.
Oh, right.
All right, then, so I'll see you Monday. Okay, see you later.
See ya.
See you later, Mel.
Bye. Bye.
The friends left at 1:10, assuming Philip was still there to take Melanie home.
I was still on the stairs talking to the bouncer, and I saw a pretty girl sat there. I was talking to a bloke, like 5'10", with a dark complexion, very tidy dress, black trousers, silk brown shirt, black shoes, and a very flashy watch. A little while later, I seen the couple leave the club together.
Okay, there you go. Here we go. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. Yes, please.
We were heading along Walcott Street towards Cadillac's nightclub. On the way up, we spotted a couple arguing outside the church hall.
Look, just let go of
He was giving her a hard time, wasn't he?
Yeah, lovers too.
The lady had very blonde hair. He was about 5'10", had dark hair, and was wearing a black bomber-style jacket.
At the same time, further up Walcott Street towards Bath city centre, a blonde in a light-coloured dress was seen being coaxed into the Podium car park. If this wasn't Melanie, who was it? On Monday, Melanie failed to turn up at work.
I was concerned, but I did wonder if she'd taken the day off, and I put a note on there asking her to contact me as soon as possible. But by the evening, there'd been no sign of her, and the note stayed there for several days. I did feel right from the very first day that something has happened to her, and as the days have gone by, and the weeks, and the months, I'm quite sure something serious has happened to her. She had everything to look forward to. She was young, attractive, had so much to look forward to in her life, and I'm sure she wouldn't have done this of her own free will. If she is still alive, I would like just to know where she is so that we could just put our minds at rest. But if she's dead, we really badly need to know. So at least we could just bring her home.
Now, the last couple of days you might have seen publicity about this case in the Bristol Evening Post and today's papers here in the National. The case of Melanie Hall, who's missing, has been linked with the murder of Louise Smith last Christmas, almost a year ago, and with about half a dozen rapes and attempted rapes that have taken place over about 6 years. Now, Steve Livings, do you think it's the same offender?
I don't know. I deal in physical evidence and fact, and at this time there's no physical evidence or fact to link Melanie Hall's disappearance with the murder of Louise Smith or the series of rapes that have happened in Bath.
All right, well, look, let's just stick with the disappearance of Melanie for the moment. The most obvious man to find is the chap who was seen at Cadillac's nightclub talking to somebody who looked very much like Melanie.
Yes, this man was sat in an armchair with a girl described similarly to Melanie. He's about 5'7". He's dark hair, quite noticeable, because he's tanned, very tanned, and he's wearing a flashy gold watch on his wrist.
Now, he might not have been with Melanie, and even if he was with Melanie, there's no evidence she was abducted at this point.
No. In fact, I've got a belief that Melanie may have been befriended by somebody. In that last 40 minutes the club was open. Her friends have gone, she may have realised that. And I believe she may have gone off with somebody voluntarily. Maybe she got in somebody's car outside with whoever she went with. It's that person I appeal to. Did you take Melanie? Did you go away with her that night? Please help us. Telephone us now.
Okay, this is the night of Saturday, the 8th of June. What about the sightings outside the club? There were two. First, of course, the couple who were seen, and I think somebody said, oh, he seemed to be giving her a hard time. Then a little later on, the girl seen slightly manhandled into a car park.
That's right. The similarity is this. All those girls are similarly described as Melanie, a young, blonde lady. Now, it may be that that's not Melanie at all. And again, please come forward so that I can eliminate you from our inquiries.
And again, the sighting on the Kennet and Avon Canal, likely to be a red herring, that, is it?
Could well be a red herring. It's just the name Melanie. It's just a chance. Perhaps the witness got it wrong, I don't know.
OK, well, if you can help resolve any of those sightings, here's the number. It's a free call. Don't hesitate. And, of course, don't hesitate if you've heard anything about this case and can help in that way. 0500 600 600.
On October 5, 2009, 13 years after Melanie Hall disappeared, a motorway worker found a plastic bin bag containing bones while he was clearing a vegetation patch on a slip road at junction 14 of the M5 motorway. The bones in the bag included a skull, pelvis and thigh bone, and further remains were found buried and spread around the field by the side of the motorway. Police confirmed that the remains were human, and they showed a piece of jewelry found at the site to Hall's parents, who confirmed that it had belonged to their daughter. Despite this, police refused to confirm that the body was that of Hall until a post-mortem had been carried out. The remains were formally identified as being Hall's through dental records on the 7th of October 2009. She had incurred severe blunt trauma to her head, resulting in a fractured skull, cheekbone and jaw. Hall had also been tied up with a blue rope. Hall's parents launched a fresh appeal on the 8th of October 2009 for anyone with information to come forward, while Avon and Somerset CIDDS Mike Britton stated that he was staying on after his retirement to continue working on the Hall disappearance, codenamed Operation Denmark, having spent 13 years on the case.
First, a case that has really made the headlines this month, the murder of Melanie Hall. 13 years ago, the 25-year-old graduate went missing from a nightclub in Bath. Despite a massive manhunt and several appeals on Crime Watch, her disappearance remained a complete mystery. That was until 3 weeks ago, when her remains were discovered near the M5 in Gloucestershire. As we reveal new evidence in the case tonight, her parents ask for your help. Rav joined detectives at the scene.
There's growing concern for the safety of a woman who's been missing since the weekend.
Police investigating the case of a missing 25-year-old woman are marking the second anniversary of her disappearance by offering a reward.
10 years after their daughter disappeared, her parents made another heartfelt appeal.
Earlier this month, workmen clearing this spot by the M5 discovered a black bin bag. Inside were human bones belonging to a young woman. After 13 agonising years, Melanie Hall had been found.
She was a very kind girl, always there, ready to help people. A person Slightly in the shadows. She was quite shy, and it took her a little time to get used to people. But once she did, then she was a good friend.
She was a very home-loving girl, bright, intelligent. She'd completed her degree, just enjoyed going out and only enjoyed her friends.
As small children, we used to wear the same clothes. My mum used to dress us in the same clothes, so we were, you know, almost like twins. We did everything together, you know, brownies, guides. We went to the same primary school, we went to the same, you know, secondary school as we grew older. You know, we were very, very close as sisters.
On the evening of Saturday the 8th of June 1996, 25-year-old psychology graduate Melanie Hall met up with her boyfriend and their friends to go clubbing at Cadillac's in Bath. In the early hours of Sunday morning, Melanie's friends left the club thinking her boyfriend was still there. What they didn't know was that he had already left without telling anyone.
I'll see you Monday. Okay, see you later. See ya. See you later, Mel. Bye. Bye.
What then happened to Melanie remains a mystery.
I think probably over the first couple of years, probably we did raise our hopes every time the police came to tell us that there might be some progress in the investigation. But as the years go by, there's no way you can function at that level every time somebody comes up with possibly some information.
Since her disappearance nearly a month ago...
Police diving teams searched this area of the River Avon at the time of Melanie's disappearance. 2 men were arrested in connection with the murder hunt, but were later released without charge.
As the years went by, I did believe, or began to believe, that whatever had happened to Melanie, that possibly she would not be found, or possibly not found in our lifetime.
Part of the M5 north of Bristol remains closed tonight after the discovery of a set of bones next to a slip road.
It's about 12:15. And there was a team of workmen who were clearing the drainage ditch that runs alongside this slip road at junction 14. What happened was one of those workmen was trimming the vegetation down, and he then discovered some bones. They looked like human bones, and a skull that was exposed.
So this is a scene?
Yes, it is, yeah. I can show you exactly where the body and the remains were.
Right under here. What was discovered within here then?
Well, what was found were obviously some of the visible bones, and in particular it was apparent that there were some black bin bags that were either wrapping around or encased some of the body, and wrapped around those bags was some thin blue rope which appeared to have been used to bind around the body and to cover over the black bin bags that were around the remains and the bones that we could see.
How did you identify who on earth this person was?
Well, clearly I need some expert assistance, and I had the assistance of a forensic archaeologist and anthropologist, and it was that forensic archaeologist who very quickly gave us a significant breakthrough by looking at the exposed pelvic bones of the remains, and he was able to say that he believed it to be the body of a woman, probably in her mid-20s.
You also had another crucial lead that came about from here as well.
Yes, we did, as they were...
This ring had a floral type, ivy leaf type pattern on it.
My hand...
which was quite distinctive, and it appeared to still be on a finger bone of the remains, and clearly it was at that point that we suspected that these may be the remains of Melanie Hall.
When the police arrived in the evening with these photographs, and we looked at them, it was very obvious from the photographs that this ring had a floral type, ivy leaf type pattern on it.
My hands were shaking so much I could hardly hold it to look at, but I think as soon as I saw it, then I realised that it was Melanie's. That's hard to come to terms with, really.
I remember just crying and thinking, it's all over now, she's found, it's all over. That was my first initial feeling.
Melanie had suffered fractures to her skull, cheekbone and jaw, and And with the remains now identified, the forensic investigation could begin.
There are a number of forensic experts involved. There's a pollen expert, a soil expert, fingerprint expert, DNA expert. There's a whole series of painstaking processes to go through, but bearing in mind that these remains have been exposed to the elements for 13 years, we're not really sure how successful these processes will be.
So everyone's working on this case. So what areas are individual people working on?
In 1996 there was a huge investigation, and at that time there were literally thousands of statements taken from different people, and staff on this investigation are revisiting and reviewing lots of the investigation that was conducted all those years ago. I've also got staff looking at CCTV that was recovered back from 1996, and obviously since the discovery of a body we've had a number of calls from members of the public. There's a lot of officers devoted to researching that information and seeing how that can help us progress the investigation.
What you still need to determine is what happened to Melanie all those years ago.
Absolutely. We can't rely on forensic evidence in this case, and I am sure that there are people out there that know what happened to Melanie. They know what happened to her in Cadillac's nightclub, and they know where she went and who she was with and how it was that she came to be left by the M5 at junction 14. And I would appeal to anyone who has got information that they haven't revealed for 13 years, for whatever reason, now is the time to come forward. Now is the time to help us detect this crime and bring to justice Melanie's killer.
I know that she's been found, but no one can tell me exactly when she died and exactly how she died. And if you asked any mum, you know, they worry about their children when they're tiny and you lose them on the beach and you can't see them for 5 minutes, you know, your heart sinks. And it's exactly that feeling, and that's every day, all day.
Knowing that she'd been murdered and dumped by the side of the motorway, I really felt the fear for my sister, which is something I hadn't allowed myself to feel for a long time because it's almost too painful to go there.
13 years ago, we had a beautiful, vibrant daughter here on the threshold of life. We now know that she was brutally beaten about the head, tied up in some bin bags, and thrown away on the side of a motorway like a crisp packet. And our focus now is very much on finding the person or persons responsible for that terrible act.
On the 29th of October 2009, police announced that 3 keys to a Ford vehicle, possibly a Transit, Fiesta or Escort, had been found near the body, and that they were working with Ford to try to identify the vehicle. Crime Watch also launched a fresh appeal for information, which resulted in more than 200 phone calls from the public. The reward for information leading to arrest was also increased to £20,000.
I'm joined now here in the studio by Detective Superintendent Mike Corsier. An ache every day, all day, we heard there. But it seems to me that family are very strong despite everything they've been through.
Yes, they've been extremely courageous and shown great dignity over the last 13 years. What they need to know now is who killed Melanie and why.
It's early days for you and your team, but you want to reveal to our viewers something tonight that may be important in the investigation. What is the new evidence?
Yeah, well, significantly, very close to Melanie's remains, we found some car keys. We know that they're Ford car keys, and we know that they were produced for a vehicle that was manufactured in the mid-1990s, which is the period that we're particularly interested in. And we really need to know what vehicle do those keys relate to and what connection is there with Melanie.
OK, now you don't need Ford dealership people phoning in and telling you about the keys, because you know a lot about the keys, but it's the bunch of them that's quite distinctive in that grouping, and they also have a tag that might be important.
Yes, they do. There's a red master key, a programming key, which is together with 2 ignition keys and an identifiable tag. Now, it's the tag that relates to the keys and not to a particular vehicle. So we don't know which vehicle these keys relate to. We don't know whether they're connected to Melanie's disappearance and her murder, but they have been found in very close proximity, and we just really need to know what is the story behind these keys.
What about forensics? Anything important there?
Well, we know that Melanie's body was wrapped and covered in black bin bags and then tied up with rope similar to this. Those bags and rope are still being subject to forensic examination.
But the passage of time may be against us, and we can't rely on forensics in this case.
Mike, let's talk about the passage of time. Let's remind people of precisely the date and what you need to know about the circumstances surrounding that night.
Well, Melanie went out on the 8th of June 1996. The last sighting of her is on the 9th of June in the early hours of the morning in the nightclub at just after 1:10. We don't know what happened to her then. Where did she go? Who was she with? And how is it that her body came to be found by the M5? And what we really need to know is from anyone who does know, who has kept quiet for 13 years, please speak to us, please come and tell us what's happened so we can identify, finally, Melanie's killer and bring them to justice.
An e-fit or electronic facial identification technique is a computer-based method of producing facial composites of wanted criminals, based on eyewitness descriptions. An e-fit was created of Melanie Hall's attacker, and he was described as being a white male, 27 years old, 5'10" of medium build with dark brown hair, dark brown eyes, bushy eyebrows and clean-shaven. He was wearing black trousers, black shoes and a brown silk shirt. He also may have had a gold hooped earring in his right ear, and he also may have worn a flashy gold watch. Christopher Hampton, who was I consider a strong person of interest in the disappearance and murder of Melanie Hall because of the similar modus operandi in regards to another murder which occurred on June 9, 1984 in Bath, Somerset. Hampton was convicted of the brutal stabbing murder of 17-year-old Melanie Rode. Christopher Hampton was caught in 2015 after police linked DNA from Melanie's clothing to his daughter through familial DNA testing after her DNA was routinely swabbed after she received a caution for criminal damage involving a domestic dispute with her boyfriend. Both Melanie Rode and Melanie Hall left nightclubs in Bath, Somerset in the early hours 12 years apart from each other on the same date, June 9. Melanie Rode was stabbed 26 times as she left the Beau Nash nightclub on June 9, 1984. Melanie Hall disappeared on June 9, 1996 after she left the Cadillac's nightclub, and her partial remains were found on the 5th of October 2009 by a workman on the M5 motorway near Thornbury, South Gloucestershire. It was determined that Melanie Hall had suffered severe fractures to her skull and face, and had been tied up with rope, although a definitive cause of death could not be established. In 2016, the Avon and Somerset police stated that both cases are not linked, although Christopher Hampton doesn't seem to be definitively ruled out, even though he may not have been a DNA match to DNA from the blue rope used to tie up Melanie Hall's body in the Melanie Hall case. Christopher Hampton was also considered a person of interest and a possible suspect in the 1984 stabbing murder of Shelley Morgan, whose body was found in a Somerset woodland on October 1984, just 4 months after she disappeared on June 11, 1984. He is also considered a person of interest and possible suspect in the March 28, 1987 stabbing and strangulation murder of 66-year-old Helen Fleet in Whorlbury Woods near Weston-super-Mare. Due to the similar modus operandi and nature of the crimes, I feel he's more likely to be connected to the Helen Fleet and Shelley Morgan murders than Melanie Hall. The Avon and Somerset police may have ruled him out through DNA at this point, unbeknown to the public. Swindon taxicab driver Christopher Halliwell is a suspected serial killer who was also questioned in regards to the Melanie Hall case. On the afternoon of the 24th of March 2011, police arrested Halliwell on suspicion of kidnapping. The arrest was made at an Asda supermarket in North Swindon, where Halliwell's green Toyota Avensis taxi was also seized. Later the same day, Sean O'Callaghan's body was found in a shallow grave near Uffington, Oxfordshire. He was convicted and eventually pleaded guilty to the murder of Sean O'Callaghan on the 19th of October 2012. Tests revealed Sean O'Callaghan had not been sexually assaulted and she likely died from head injuries, though a forensic pathologist has yet to confirm a precise cause of death. Christopher Hallowell eventually confessed to the unsolved murder of 20-year-old Becky Godden Edwards, which occurred in 2003, and told investigators in 2011 he buried her body in a field. Christopher Hallowell strangled Becky Godden Edwards to death and items of women's clothing were found in a pond in Ramsbury, Wiltshire, which Hallowell used as a trophy store. His initial confession was ruled inadmissible in 2012 because of how it was obtained. Hallowell was not brought to trial for Becky Godden Edwards' murder until September 2016, when a different judge ruled the confession evidence was admissible. He is serving a whole life term for the murder. He is believed to be a serial killer due to 60 items of women's clothing which were found at his home, and 2 of the items of clothing were Becky Godden Edwards' cardigan and Sean O'Callaghan's boots, which were found in the Ramsbury Pond. He kept trophies of Becky Godden Edwards' body parts, according to her mother, because the police did not give all her remains back after she initially was found. Christopher Hallowell was questioned in connection to the disappearance and murder of Melanie Hall, but nothing substantial linking him to the crime ever came to the surface, and I don't believe his DNA was on the blue rope, which would potentially link him to the murder of Melanie Hall. DNA of Becky Godden Edwards was found on the shovel he used to bury her body. He is linked to other murders and has also been linked to the March 18, 2009 disappearance of 35-year-old Claudia Lawrence in York, England. Mark Shillabeer was said to have been a suspect in the Melanie Hall case in news media articles. Mark Shillabeer was convicted of the March 1999 murder of 18-year-old Rebecca Storrs and given a minimum term of 22 years in prison. In March 1999, Rebecca met up with a group of people at a kebab house after a night out who were on their way to what they thought was a party at a house in Wildmore, and she tagged along. They'd been invited by a girl they met in a club. But there was no party. It was there that Rebecca met Mark Shillabeer, a 32-year-old divorced father of 2, as she was leaving the party. Shillabeer lured her away. It would be the last time she was seen alive. It is believed that Shillabeer took Rebecca to his favorite courting spot behind a Booker's Cash and Carry, in Tondu Road, where the teenager spurned his advances. Residents living opposite the river bank later reported hearing a woman's voice and a piercing scream at around 4:30 a.m. Rebecca was strangled, smashed over the head with a hammer, and subjected to a horrific sex attack by Mark Shillabeer. In March 1999, Rebecca's body was found face down and half submerged in the River Ogmore in Bridgend in South Wales behind a cash and carry store by a dog walker. Mark Shillabeer has never admitted her murder and continues to claim his innocence, claiming he saw her leave with a red-headed man despite being convicted and imprisoned for at least 22 years. A friend and former cellmate of Mark Shillabeer claimed he bragged about killing Melanie Hall. He may bear more of a resemblance to the E-Fit than other persons of interest or suspects, but his timeline in regards to where he was when Melanie Hall was murdered may not add up to make him a stronger person of interest in her case. His modus operandi and the nature of the murder he committed may be similar, although many other persons of interest and possible suspects have also committed crimes similar to the murder of Melanie Hall. British murderer, serial rapist, serial abductor and suspected serial killer John Cannon was also questioned in connection to the Melanie Hall case. Cannon is the only suspect in the disappearance of Susie Lampla, who had an appointment in July 1986 to meet a man calling himself Mr. Kipper, and has not been seen since. In November 2002, the Crown Prosecution Service decided that there was insufficient evidence to charge him. car salesman John Cannon bludgeoned 29-year-old textiles factory manager Shirley Banks to death and disposed of her body in a woodland area near Dead Woman's Ditch in Somerset in October 1987. Shirley Banks's naked, moss-covered decomposed body was found in a stream by a woman, 6 months after her disappearance, on Easter Sunday on the 3rd of April 1988. The police found dark red mud at the site where her body was left, gold jewelry and buttons from a dress she had bought. According to pathologist Bernard Knight, she was killed by being hit repeatedly on the head with a rock. The police built up a composite set of Banks's fingerprints from her parents' house, her home and her work. The left thumbprint matched a document in Cannon's flat. He acknowledged that the document came from his flat, before he knew about the thumbprint. John Cannon was charged with her kidnap and murder on the 23rd of December 1987. In July 1988, John Cannon was sentenced to a minimum term of 35 years for sodomy, grievous bodily harm, sexual assaults on 2 women, the attempted abduction of another woman and the murder and abduction of Shirley Banks. Detectives investigated claims from sources that said that Cannon had spent many hours planning what he described as the perfect abduction with a fellow inmate. The other inmate, Christopher Clark, was a convicted rapist who supposedly put the plan into action after being released from prison. Inexplicably, although Cannon was in prison at the time of Hall's abduction and murder, some witnesses came forward to say they were certain that Cannon was the man they had seen abducting Hall that night. John Cannon's former prison mate Christopher Clark was a serial rapist known as the Early Bird Rapist after a string of knife-point morning attacks on women at homes across the County Essex in England. 2 months before Melanie Hall's disappearance, Clark was freed early from a 14-year sentence for a string of sexual assaults. He denied being involved, gave an alibi and was released. A month after Melanie vanished, he attacked a young teacher, also in Bath, but she fought him off. Christopher Clark was trapped by DNA from blood spots he left on the teacher's clothes and was given a life sentence at Bristol Crown Court in August 1997. Over the years, it's been speculated that maybe the elusive Batman rapist was involved in Melanie Hall's murder. The Batman rapist is an unidentified English serial sex offender who committed at least 17 sexual assaults on women in the city of Bath, Somerset, between 1991 and 2000. He is the subject of Britain's longest-running serial rape investigation, codenamed Operation Eagle, and has now eluded capture for more than 30 years. Detective Inspector Paul James of Avon and Somerset Constabulary, leading the operation, said it is one of the most complicated and protracted investigations that the force has ever undertaken. The perpetrator was nicknamed after leaving a baseball cap bearing a logo from the Batman film series at the scene of one attack. Police believe that there are more victims who have never come forward. The independent crime-fighting charity Crime Stoppers UK have offered a £10,000 reward for information leading to his capture. The perpetrator has also been referred to in the news media as the Riddler. In October 2013, police said that they had found a white Volkswagen Gold GTI cabriolet connected to their inquiries, and had received relevant information about the rope used to tie up Hall's body. On the 25th of November 2013, it was reported that a 44-year-old man had been arrested at an address in Bath, on suspicion of murder. The man was released on bail until the 19th of December, and a property at Roundhill Park, Whiteway, was searched. On the 19th of March 2014, detectives wanted information on a second vehicle, another Volkswagen, this time a white Volkswagen Golf GTI hardtop with the registration number C752CYE, between the beginning of April 1996 to August 7, 1996, when the car was once again registered with the DVLA. Officers were particularly keen to talk to anyone who may have owned the Golf, or have had information about its whereabouts during that time, with connections to Cardiff, Wales and the Pentwyn area, a district northeast of the city centre. It was believed that they may have had crucial information that could help the investigation. On the 28th of November 2014, it was reported that there was insufficient evidence to charge the suspect, who was taken into custody on November 25, 2013 on suspicion of murder. On the 23rd of June 2016, a 45-year-old man was arrested following retrieval of DNA from where Hall's remains were discovered, and released on bail a few days later. By October 2019, 11 arrests had been made during the police investigation, but no one has ever been charged. In October 2019, police revealed they had obtained a partial DNA profile from the rope wrapped around the bag containing Hall's remains, and stated that they remained confident that Hall's killer would be caught. In October 2019, Melanie Hall's parents reinstated a £50,000 reward for information leading to an arrest and conviction.
Now 23 years since Melanie Hall was murdered, but for her parents, the pain never goes away.
Still as raw today as it was 23 years ago. And I don't think people realise that sometimes. The loss of Melanie has been like death by 1,000 cuts. And if you lose someone instantly, like a road accident, or even if Melanie had been found 24 hours later, however terrible that is, it has happened, and you take that on board and deal with it as best you can. Whereas with us, it sort of crept up on us.
Melanie's ashes are kept in the family home.
Well, it's all we've got of her, really. And you know, obviously she's still, you know, she's got a bedroom here and everything, but, you know, I can't bring her back. And she was such good fun, so.
Melanie was last seen alive at the Cadillacs nightclub in Bath in June 1996. But it wasn't until October 2009 that her remains were found next to a motorway slip road off the M5 near Thornbury in South Gloucestershire.
Police say it's highly likely that whoever left Melanie's body here was familiar with this area. But they say the person who left the body may not be the person who killed Melanie. And if that's the case, they're now appealing for that person to come forward.
Police can now reveal that traces of DNA were found on ropes similar to this that was wrapped around bin liners containing Melanie's body. Her parents just want answers.
Well, I would just like to know why and how it happened.
We honestly believe that eventually we will find Melanie's killers. One day someone will come forward with information.
Melanie's parents say they remain eternally optimistic that her killer will be found and that one day they will finally have justice.